Recording in progress.
Okay, I call to order the Inland Wetlands Agency meeting of December 1st, 2025 at 6:02 p.m. Members present are Aho Corsi, for Tony, Ron, Ward, Wutch, and alternates Marcelino, Walters, and Sajcik, and alternates, see, that's 6, 7, 8, 9. Everyone's seated, right? So all three alternates are seated.
Alternate Walters is asked not to be seated as he's doing some solo parenting tonight.
Okay.
He's here mostly to listen.
So he's listening in. Okay,
Right.
so we're seating Marcelino and Sajcik. Okay. We have a consent agenda from November 17th, which consists of approval of minutes.
May I make a minor correction?
Yes,
without
yes,
Taking it out of the,
please do.
I made a mistake in that I didn't say out loud that I was abstaining for the minute.
Oh.
But I was, and I didn't vote, so I think I would count. Microphone.
For those online,
I think because I didn't vote, it's legally an abstention, and legally I couldn't vote on it anyway, so I think that would be the only suggestion I would make.
Okay,
Which moves to accept the minutes as amended by the secretary.
okay, moved by Wutch. Second by Ron. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, and yes, and we have Zach England with us, and you are, so we still have 2 seated and 7 regular members. Right. Okay.
Marcelino and Sajcik are seated
Right.
for absent members.
Okay. So it passes unanimously. We had communications from the Conservation Commission. Monthly report. We have a public hearing tonight. We're continuing, right?
yes, Mr. Chair.
The public hearing that we had before. So I reopen the public hearing at 6:05 p.m. Members present are Aho Corsi, Anglin, for Tony, Ron, Ward, Wutch, and alternates Marcelino and Sajcik, who are seated. And Josh is listening. Hi, Josh. So this is the application of the town of Mansfield for a complete street improvement on Maple Road. There was a delay last time, right? Because we needed to wait for
There was a delay. There was a wait for the wetlands agent report for the applicant, which staff had received but not yet had a chance to read. That wetlands agent report is now attached in your packet. This also gave us an opportunity to make sure that the application went before the Conservation Commission, and the Conservation Commission discussed the application and raised a few questions to engineering. Engineering has provided answers to those questions. Those came in immediately before Thanksgiving, so they didn't quite make your packet, but I have answers to them today if anyone would like clarifications on any of the items that Conservation had asked. But in general, as a recap, the project requires the widening of the roadway itself. Even though the travel way of the road gets a little narrower, the width of the travel way gets wider to compensate for putting in that multi-use pathway along the side of the road. And as a result of that, there are some necessary impacts. When Maple Road was built, it was built in a area that is relatively easy to traverse because it is a low point in many sections. And unfortunately, that's where water pools. And this is a common pattern that we see all across our town and many other towns, New England. So there are places where the wetlands come right up to the toe of slope for the road. There is no way to put in any sort of municipal public improvements without having direct wetlands impacts. This was a topic of discussion at the Conservation Commission's meeting, and we discussed a little bit about how this is why we're weighing not any impact, but a significant impact, right? And is there a public benefit? It's important that people can walk on your roads. So is the small amount of damage being done by losing some wetland surface area going to offset the benefit gained to the public good. And that's why we look for things like loss of function or any idea that we might cause harm to the system's functionality, not just the pure area. The project, as presented last time, has received no changes to site plans. Staff has now read the wetlands report. We find it adequate. I had a couple clarifying questions for the wetland scientist for the applicant, and they were satisfactorily answered. Specifically, the applicant notes in their wetland scientist report that there is a vernal pool likely present in wetlands B, which is the largest wetland system. It is also the wetland system that the application is having the least impact on. It's having a total permanent impact of 63 square feet. And so your slightly less than 8x8 area of fill is a real impact. But while the vernal pool condition could not be assessed as it is not spring and thus is not vernal, we can feel fairly safe in the fact that the likely presence of a vernal pool substantially away from the road would not be impacted by approximately 60 square feet of toe of slope fill. So we had some clarifications about that. The wetlands scientist and I conversed, but that's what has changed. If anyone would like to hear the engineer comments to Conservation Commission questions, I can read those. Otherwise,
I'm interested.
Absolutely. So Conservation Commission had a couple questions about the design of the road concerning runoff and what will happen with salt on the proposed multi-use trail. You put in any sort of increased pavement, you are going to have to maintain it for the winter. Maintaining it for the winter requires salt. The trail is pitched for the overwhelming majority of the project's length towards the roadway. This means that runoff that hits the road does not immediately go towards the wetland, but instead goes back into the road, into catch basins along the road, and then out into whatever the catchment outflow is. Often we have a riprap outflow at those sections. There were questions about whether different materials had been considered for the pathway. The pathway is intended to be an impervious asphalt surface, which means that anything that hits it isn't infiltrating into the ground, it's running off, and getting that into ground infiltration is very important. But the design engineer noted a couple of problems with alternate materials. Specifically, pervious pavement or pervious pavers, which we see sometimes in parking lots, work because they are an area where you will get water pooling for a good amount of time. With a sidewalk that is pitched, water is going to run off of it before it is able to get into the ground. And so because it's not pooling in a necessarily flat area, you have lots of hills as you move along a sidewalk. Pervious pavement doesn't work. A non-paved surface creates lots of issues for maintenance during the winter. So doing something like stone dust or gravel also doesn't work for maintenance. The engineer opined about catch basin upgrades for stormwater catch basins and noted various improvements to the drainage structures under the road, as well as replacements of old catch basins, which should improve stormwater treatment in the area. And that there is a slight increase in impervious area, given that the road gets slightly smaller, but the walkway adds a little bit back in. There is a slight increase in impervious area that was accounted for with stormwater calculations for the upgrades to the basins. Those were the Conservation Commission's questions and the responses from the engineer.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I can say from personal perch, watching them work on Spring Hill Road, that they have put in additional catch basins and improved what was there. And it's really, and they've put the border to keep it from running off into somewhere it shouldn't. And I have to say, they did a very good job on that. I was curious about, they were asking about surveillance of the whatever you put in place to keep it from spreading while they're working, the protection. And after it's done, there's supposed to be a weekly report or something to that effect. But that's from their people doing it. Do you oversee that? Do you go on a regular basis to all these places that have it in the?
That's a good question about process, Vera. So to just rephrase the question of what is going on with these applications when we approve with a condition that says there should be weekly monitoring reports of existing conditions on site to make sure that while it's destabilized, there is someone checking to make sure that the erosion controls, the silt fencing and the hay bales, they're all in place. Because if you put them up and then they wash out and then they don't get fixed, they're not doing a very good job controlling erosion. The simple answer to that is that, yes, I do inspect. For the larger projects that we have in town, for things like construction projects related to the standard, I would be out there every other week. I would join an inspector. For those projects, they do have an inspector that sends me a report weekly, or whatever the timetable is. For some projects, it's monthly. For the scope of a project like this is a little bit more difficult to say. You have to do the whole site at once, because you may not put up erosion controls for the site at once. It's a long linear project. So what will be, what I believe was written into the draft motion, which we can talk about when we get to the item under old business, was the idea that any unstabilized portions of the site would be inspected by myself or the town engineer when it goes in. That would be logged in an inspection, and then when the next portion of erosion controls goes up, an inspection would also be done. I am always notified by Public Works when erosion controls are put up on any project like this. So we do receive notification, and I do go out and check.
Good.
Yes, Alex.
Mr. Chairman, question. Did I hear correctly, you're going to be expanding Maple Road a bit, or no?
Yes, so the project as proposed by the town Public Works Department requires that the physical space on which the road is constructed get wider. The paved surface gets slightly narrower. So the paved surface is going down to, from the plans that were submitted, it's 12-foot travel ways. So it will be 24 feet of pavement wide. And then I believe the road is currently 28 feet wide. There is an 8-foot sidewalk going in. And so with a little bit of space, the actual road width, travel way plus sidewalk plus a little bit of give, goes up to around 33 feet in width. So it gets slightly wider when you factor all of the travel improvements for both pedestrians and vehicles. And that is why there is direct wetlands impact.
How far down? How far are you going to?
I believe that the change to the road width is being made from the corner with the senior center, or at least from where the improvements begin, all the way down to the intersection with Spring Hill Road.
Okay, thank you.
The middle school has the sidewalk go the way down, but I don't know that the road has to get wider once you get to Spring Hill.
Anyone else? Okay,
Oh, your microphone's not on, Vera. Just, there you go.
I like to see the sidewalks in. That's a great network, because it's coming from South Eagleville Road, which is all connected now up to here, all the way down to Spring Hill, which will also, I guess, translate into an additional sidewalk from Spring Hill to the school.
Yes, that's correct. So the proposed project is, the purpose for the proposed project is to continue the pedestrian network expansion to run from the middle school, Mansfield Middle School, all the way up to the corner, which links the middle school with the senior center, and then onwards with the new improvements on South Eagleville Road, which are ongoing to the community center. That is the proposed purpose of the project.
okay. Any other reason to leave this public hearing open? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close it.
Mr. Chairman, move to close the. public
Okay.
hearing.
Okay, moved by Ron, second by DeVivo. All in favor? And now we have, since we have, who just came? John, John just came. So,
Actually, so
Alex.
because Mr. DeVivo showed up after we had
Oh, that's
people
right.
seated for the public hearing, can we have a different second for the motion?
that's right. Okay,
Sorry, second.
okay.
Second by Anglin.
Anglin seconds.
Are we gonna go back to the?
No, that's a great question, Mr. Zychek. So once people are seated and the public hearing closes, the 9 who were seated while it was open are the people who will vote. So Mr. DeVivo will not vote in old business. This will be a vote of the 9 of you who were here first.
So yeah, you're still voting. Okay, so all those in favor? Okay, and we have unanimous. Okay, very good. Okay, now we move on to old business, which is the complete street improvements on Maple Road, including a multi-use trail. And we could, if someone wants to put that motion forward, we could then discuss it. Who feels like reading a lot today? Okay, thank you very.
I move to grant an inland wetlands license pursuant to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Regulations of the Town of Mansfield to the Town of Mansfield Department of Public Works for application W 1639, complete street improvements on Maple Road, including a multi-use trail. In approving this application, the Inland Wetlands Agency considered all testimony and communications. This action is based on a finding of no anticipated significant impact on the wetlands or watercourses and is conditioned on the following provisions being met. 1, a complete construction sequence, including erosion control detail and phasing plan, shall be submitted by the design engineer or principal contractor to the environmental planner prior to the beginning of construction. The design engineer or principal contractor shall be responsible for ensuring that the construction sequence is adhered to throughout the construction process. 2, appropriate erosion and sedimentation control shall be installed prior to the construction, maintained during construction, and removed when disturbed areas are permanently stabilized. The applicant shall direct the design engineer or another qualified specialist to inspect any unstabilized portions of the site during construction on a weekly basis and after each measurable precipitation event of 1.0 inch or greater in a 24-hour basis, to ensure that appropriate erosion and sedimentation controls are maintained and properly working during construction until the site is permanently stabilized. This professional shall be approved by and make report to the Mansfield Inland Wetlands agent or their designee. 3, native plants shall be planted in any areas disturbed by construction to restore the natural vegetative character of the wetland and surrounding upland. A planting schedule consisting of native plants appropriate to the soil characteristics of the area should be prepared and submitted to the environmental planner prior to planting. 4, any excess material shall be removed from the site or distributed at least 75 feet from the edge of wetlands. This approval is valid for 5 years until December 2030, unless additional time is requested by the applicant and granted by the Inland Wetlands Agency. The applicant shall notify the wetlands agent before any work begins. Each phase of this project shall be completed within 6 months. Any extension of the activity period shall come before this agency for further review and comment.
Moved by Ward. Second by Wutsch. Any discussion? So
One small note, although it is technically correct because today is the 1st of December, the approval should be valid until December 1st, 2030 and not just December 2030. That was a mistake for me.
okay. With that minor
Do we
correction,
need to clarify between rain and snow precipitation? 1 inch of snow is very different from 1 inch of rain.
That's a good question. In the frozen conditions that tends to come with the ground when it snows do tend to make those inspections boring insofar as not much is happening. Boring is good. Boring is good for erosion control inspections. Let me put it that way. I haven't considered that. We could say I would have to give further consideration. Saying 1 inch regardless is really safe for snow and pretty normal for rain. I think if we make it this way, then we are safe, and I will consider a better answer to your question for next meeting.
If an inspection is very low cost, I don't know how in-depth these are. If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter.
They're not particularly high cost. You're paying for the engineer to go out to the site. The engineering agent for the applicant in this case is town engineer Derek Delay, who is right here, and the site is about 3 minutes away. So in terms of public cost and considering that from a public cost standpoint, I would say that it's not particularly egregious. But I do think making the stance of like, we shouldn't cost the applicant any more money than we have to, and 1 inch of snow is really not a lot of snow. We shouldn't have to inspect for that. It would be reasonable to say something like 5 inches of snow. It's not the rough conversion of snow to rain is 10 inches of snow for 1 inch of rain, but it doesn't tend to work out that way exactly in terms of precipitory impact because of when the snow melts, it can happen all at once. Or not all at once, but rapidly. So I'm going to consult with some engineers to get you a better answer on that. If you'd like to say 1 inch of snow and 5 inches of rain, we can revise the motion to do that. Yeah, the other way, not the way I just said, the other way around.
I don't feel inclined to press the issue, but
That's a really good question though. So I'll get you a good answer for it.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, Marcelino and Sychek are voting. DeVivo is not voting. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. It is unanimous. Okay, very good. We have no new business. We have some communication about training requirements. This is a good time to tell us about the training requirement.
Happy holidays. You have to do more training. So Public Act 2573 passed this year. And one of the requirements of this Public Act is that there is now a training requirement for wetlands commissioners. So before this, the previous training requirement that was instituted required a mandatory number of hours of training for planning and zoning commissioners. And so you all had to do 4 hours of training, one of which had to be about affordable housing. The training requirements for wetlands commissioners, which will begin in the new year, will require that everyone take an online class that will be offered through the state's website as soon as the requirements are rolling. I will make sure that it gets sent out to everyone. Some of you may have taken it already. It is a several-hour training about wetlands and your authority and what you do. It's probably being revamped right now since this Public Act came out and they're sprucing it up a little bit. If anyone has any questions, I will let you know. This is, as far as I know, mostly an online training, though there may be in-person classes offered. Before this, one person on this commission, including me, had to be trained. So it was not a heavy requirement beforehand, and technically the wetlands agent did not have to have passed this class, which was certainly something that many of us felt was not sufficient. So we're in the wetlands agency community, we're very happy with this change, and I'll make sure that you get some email blasts going forward.
Okay, and Sandy will keep track of whether we're
Right,
up to snuff each year.
right, and you all will just need to make sure that you tell us when you've completed these so that we have to track
Oh, right.
compliance. Yeah, so we have to track compliance, send something to the town council for both the Inland Wetlands Agency training requirements and planning and zoning.
But you can remind us if we need to do it. Right, okay.
I think Mr. Ron has a question.
Yeah, I went looking in this past 5 or 6 days for that particular training.
Yeah.
Is Clear going to do this or is it going to be Deep?
I believe it's going to be clear.
Okay,
Yep, that's what
I believe it's moving over to Clear from Deep. Deep has historically had it on their webpage, but it has been down intermittently for the past 6 years. So that is obviously something they want to rectify. I believe it's going to move over to Clear.
do you think that's going to be available after the first of the year?
I do believe
Because
so.
it isn't available right now.
No, I do believe it will be available after the first of the year.
Question answered.
Okay, inland wetlands. Agency
Vera has a
meeting.
question.
Oh, Vera, yeah.
Does that begin January 1 or?
Yeah.
at
January 1, 26.
November?
No retroactive begins January 1, 26.
So we're all in compliance as of now.
You are all in compliance right now.
Okay. So inland wetlands agency meeting is adjourned at 6,
We'll be getting correspondence on that.
Yes, Mr. Zychek. I'll make sure that as soon as I have any information from the state about where things are, you'll receive an email from me, and I'll probably send you some updates throughout the year as well.
at 6:27. Okay, so switching over to planning and zoning. I call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of December 1st, 2025 at 6:30 PM. Members present are Alcoa, Corsi, Anglin, DeVivo, Fertoni, Ron, Ward, Wutch, and alternates Marcelino and Sychek. And Marcelino is seated for one absent member. We have a consent agenda with the minutes from November 17th.
Which moves to approve the consent agenda is written.
Okay, moved by Wutch,
Second by Ron.
second by Ron. Any discussion?
I'm going to be a pain.
No, please do. You're good at this.
Again,
Your microphone.
again, I abstained by not voting on those minutes. And I also asked that you put in and this one, it has the date in the motions passed by consent. Actually, I didn't mention it, but I think in the IWA, it doesn't mention the date. So it really should say somewhere what the date is on the approval of those minutes, I think.
We'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay, with those adjustments. We moved in second already. Yeah, okay. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Okay, no old business, new business. Are we getting a Zoom report?
Yes,
Zoom?
you are. So we have online the executive director of the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority. That's David Corus, who's just joined us. And if any of you attended or listened to the town council, just the November 24 meeting, David presented, he's the executive director of CMDA, and he's going to explain to the Planning and Zoning Commission how CMDA supports municipalities. And basically, he's already given this presentation to the town council. It is up to them whether or not we opt in or not. However, one of the primary features of CMDA is that they're going to be looking at your zoning regulations. And Mr. Corus will explain that in more detail. So the town council has asked that the Planning and Zoning Commission just provide some input as to whether or not they feel it's appropriate to join. And then the town council will take action at their January meeting. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think it's appropriate to hand it over to Mr. Corus.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for the opportunity to present. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person. I'll give you just a brief summary of what the Municipal Development Authority is and how we interact with our member municipalities. With a focus on the direct relevance to the Planning and Zoning Commission's purview. So we are a state quasi-public authority that was established by legislation to support towns and cities across the state in their efforts to achieve economic development and transit-oriented development by focusing on housing creation in their downtowns and near their rail or bus rapid transit stations. And so we can work with any municipality except for Hartford and East Hartford who have either a train station, a bus rapid transit station existing or planned, or a mixed-use walkable downtown, which would be the eligibility under which Mansfield would be able to participate with us. As was described, the first action is a resolution to join us, which would be taken by the town council. But once a community opts in to work with us, the next step is for us to look at the zoning regulations in the localized area of the community that is prioritized for our partnership and is eligible. So in Mansfield, that would certainly be kind of the mixed use downtown, across the street from campus, but it could also be in other nodes of the town that would meet the definition threshold of a quote unquote downtown. What we're looking at in the zoning is whether or not it can be certified a zone or multiple zones according to our statutory obligation, which is to determine whether or not the zones are likely to substantially increase the number of housing units. And with every community, I give the same caveat that I wouldn't get overly concerned by the word substantial. Mansfield, as along with other communities, have been working to find appropriate strategies to incorporate mixed income and mixed use and multifamily development. And that would be substantial given the preponderance of single family houses across the landscape. Likely is really the most important word. We look at the zoning and we look at everything from, density caps to setbacks and bulk restrictions to design guidelines, as well as infrastructure capacity to make a determination whether or not there is a likelihood that the zoning will realize the community's vision for housing as a component of their economic development and community development strategy. We haven't looked at your zoning yet. We don't do that until a community opts in. So I can't say today whether or not any of your zones could be certified as is. If not, we would provide recommendations, and those would then go to you all for assessment and consideration. We have no authority to usurp local control. We can't bypass home rule. We can't negate the actions of your board or commission. And so the recommendations are for your consideration. We would hopefully be working collaboratively with you all, so there wouldn't be, surprises in there, and you would understand why we're making the recommendations that we make. If we can certify zoning as is or through an amendment process that we work on together, then we establish a development district or districts through a memorandum of agreement with the chief executive officer of the town, and that creates funding eligibility. And so we have a $90 million capital authorization from the state, which we can invest in technical assistance, transit-oriented development, housing, building demolition or rehabilitation, or development or redevelopment. And so it's a very flexible funding source that can go to capacity enhancements and technical assistance. It can go to infrastructure investment in a partnership with the town directly, or it can provide gap financing to developers who are implementing your zoning in your community. And so there's other benefits related to school construction reimbursement rates and some other factors. But the primary benefits are being able to deploy our capacity and expertise and consultants in support of your town's efforts, and then being able to invest in the implementation of your vision through either infrastructure or gap financing directly for development. The final pieces that I'll say is just kind of where we are in the process. We commenced operations about 15 months ago. The earliest a municipality could join us was February of this year. We currently have 32 municipalities who are members of CMDA. They range in size, they range in suburban, urban, exurban, rural. They're all over the state. Some have transit, fixed route transit, some do not. In your neck of the woods, your closest neighbors who have opted in would be Windham and Manchester. but many others in east of the river and throughout the state. And the final piece I'll say is around state permitting. We work very closely with our agencies. I work for a board which includes the commissioners of transportation and public health and housing and economic and community development and policy and management and others. And a big part of our efforts are to try and align state policy to ensure that for those communities that are trying to grow in a way that's appropriate for their conditions and are setting the local stage for that through regulations and investment, that we're matching that with state permitting and process enhancements and investment to help you achieve your development objectives. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Yeah, Ken.
Mr. Corus, the review will be of all of our zoning regulations?
No, it'll just be the zoning within those areas that that are quote unquote a downtown. And so that could be areas that are downtowns today. It could be areas that you've zoned to evolve into downtowns, but it would only be within those localized areas.
Thank you.
Alex.
So if we come up with a proposal in those areas, it would have to go through your agency, I imagine. And are we competing for funds with the other towns?
Yeah, I wouldn't say you're competing with them, but we do have a limited allocation of resources that we expect will be expanded over time and replenished as those loans cycle back. So there is undoubtedly going to be less resources than there is need. But a big part of our effort is to try and help municipalities not only develop their strategy, but tell their story so that other state agencies understand the value of investment and the allocation of resources in those communities. And hopefully by working together, it becomes, a facilitation, not just of our resources, but of other state resources as well.
Thank you.
Would that also apply to private investors? Do you have some connection
Yes.
with private sources of funds?
Yeah, so part of our statutory mandate is helping you market development opportunities and building out our coalition of developers that have different expertise and different project typologies to try and matchmake with those folks that are best suited to help you implement your vision.
Are you watching the federal legislation that's being talked about for affordable housing? Does that play a role in what you advise us to do?
Yeah, so we certainly have our eye on state and federal legislation and the evolving landscape of housing and infrastructure. It doesn't, necessarily affect us one way or the other. We have a set objective from the legislature to support municipalities in their efforts for downtown revitalization and development. But it is certainly possible, and we keep our eyes open to make sure that we leverage other state and federal tools as they become available.
Any other questions, comments?
Do we sign a contract? Is that what we're working up?
So eventually the town of Mansfield would sign a contract with you, with your organization?
Yeah. So the first step is the resolution that the town council would pass to join us. And then as we work through the planning and the zoning process with you all and with others in the community, ultimately it would be a contract, which is in the form of a memorandum of agreement between the town and us that establishes the development district. And then there could be subsequent contracts therein if there's funding that flows from us to the town, or from us to developments within the community, those would all be managed by a contractual relationship between us and the town.
Yes, Alex.
Yes, are there funding limits for projects?
There are not.
Thank you.
We can just use the whole 90 million ourselves.
We're deserving.
Why not? Think big.
Go ahead.
So really your role is advisory, nothing compulsory in this deal. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Ultimately, we may have advice, and that the town's taking of that advice may be a condition upon which would have to be met to move down the process. But it's always an option to the municipality whether or not to move forward at any step.
And that advice would be in the form of our zoning regulations. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So
So
form of what?
our zoning regulations, some changes to our zoning regulations within those very specific constrained downtown areas, of which our planned development areas in the plan of conservation development may be considered downtown areas.
What would happen if you funded a development directly with the developer and then it came to us and we said no?
We
Is
wouldn't
that
fund
the form
something
of
that didn't have zoning approval.
Oh, so we would have to approve it and then you would fund it.
Yeah, it'd be so in terms of our relationship with developers, think of it just like them going to a bank for financing, right? They would be coming to us for subordinate debt to supplement their bank financing. And so they would do that knowing they have site control and entitlements and are ready to move the project forward.
And they have zoning approval already.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, all we're being asked for tonight is for us to either approve or disapprove to send this back to town council.
Right.
Right. There are recommended motions in my staff memo that Michael has up for you all. One is if you want to move forward to put that one forward, or you can decline to recommend that to the town council. But as I said, because it's the legislative body that has to agree to opt in, it would be ultimately the town council's decision, but they were very clear that they wanted to defer to the Planning and Zoning Commission to see if it's something that you all agreed with.
Great.
Does the planning department see any pitfalls in this?
I don't. I think right now it's advisory. I think we have access to their wealth of expertise. They're working throughout the state. I think, as Mr. Corus put it, the worst thing that could happen is that they come and say you need to change your zoning in these specific areas, and the Planning and Zoning Commission decides not to. And I don't think that's a huge risk. I do feel confident that maybe not 100%, but the stuff that we have put forth to the Planned Housing Design District, I think will meet many of the objectives, but I don't know that for sure because they haven't reviewed those regulations yet. So I think it's just sort of another kind of can't hurt, might help is how I'm viewing it.
Thank you.
Or it might be like another set of eyes looking at things.
I think this housing
Yeah.
issue is really is challenging, right? And I think it takes a lot. It takes not only zoning regulations, but it takes the marketing, it takes financing, it takes the permitting, the streamlining of permitting for the projects that we really want. And that's what I'm hoping that we're going to get is identifying, working with developers that will really bring the type of housing product that we want, that based on what we've identified in our plan of conservation and development. So that's my hope for this project, for this joining CMDA for Mansfield.
Okay.
I'm going to put the motion forward.
Okay.
Vera, do you have questions you want to ask first?
I just wanted to tagline on Jennifer's thoughts. My hope is that you think about upgrading all of our old existing stock and making it viable. That's what I hope.
Vera, there's only 90 million.
Okay, go ahead.
Ron puts forward recommendation, suggested motion. After the review and discussion with the executive director of CMDA, if the commission concurs, and I'm suggesting the commission should concur, that the town should opt in for the following motion is in order. Move effective December 1st, recommend to joining the Connecticut Municipal Development Authority.
Second.
Moved by Ron, second by Anglin. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay.
Thank you so much,
Passes
David.
unanimously.
Join like the cog.
Yeah.
They're gonna be in the cog, some
Smaller version.
small.
Have a good evening.
Focused.
Great.
David,
Thanks,
you're welcome
everyone.
to stay, but I know you're busy.
Yeah, no worries. Look forward to working together after the council action. Talk soon.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we have a pre-application review next.
Yeah, so just a little introduction, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
So in the past, the Planning and Zoning Commission has allowed for certain applicants to come before the commission, just especially if it's a larger project, to come in and present what they're thinking and get feedback from the commission. This is non-binding, and really it's an opportunity for you in a non-binding way to ask questions of a potential applicant about a specific project. So Attorney Reiser and Mr. Fresker are here, and I'm going to let them introduce the project, but really you shouldn't feel that anything you're saying tonight is binding, because it is not. This is not an application. It's not a public hearing. It's really kind of a gut check. This is interesting because, and I think Attorney Reiser will discuss this, but as we are moving forward with our plan of conservation and development and our future land use designation and our future land use map, this may this may have some implications for that. So I will let Attorney Reiser begin.
Thank you. Good evening, Dory Reiser from Kahan Kerensky Capicella, representing David Fresk. And just as Jennifer had said, we just want some feedback from you as to a concept, a project that we'd like to bring to town. This isn't really a big project. I know, Jennifer had mentioned sometimes with the bigger projects, they come here for some feedback. It's in the grand scheme of things, not one of your largest projects by any means to come to town, but it is at the Four Corners, which is an area that you've seen a lot of development in, that has still development potential. So it's really primarily the development is focused on a 0.32 acre parcel of land. My client has had conversations with the owner about buying multiple properties there on the corner. And I believe that two of the specific properties will be moved forward with my client if we can get some consensus that we're headed in the right direction here. And two of the properties that were listed in the narrative will be ultimately purchased by an associate of his, who is also here, Matt Raynard, and he would be doing some ownership and potential development of those in the future. But the property that we really want to talk about developing right now doesn't have a street address. It's directly between 1646, which is kind of a larger odd-shaped parcel that's got the frontage and portion of it.
Pardon me, Attorney Reiser, would you like me to pull this up on the screen for everyone to view?
That would be very helpful.
Very
But I wasn't sure if they had that on their computers. in front.
We've got,
Perfect.
oh,
Okay. All right, so let's actually start at the corner at 1650. That is one of the properties that is going to be potentially acquired by Mr. Raynard. and that David was originally interested in. That is presently PB3, okay? And PB3 along that stretch of 44, I guess that is there.
That's the Asian grocery, right?
It is,
Yeah.
yes, it is. It's presently developed. I'm not aware of any specific plans to change anything at the moment. But that is one of the pieces that is potentially up for sale to my client or his colleague. Then the next property, if we're working up towards campus now, is 1646. Now this piece is a split zone right now. The frontage, and then if you were to run that southerly line directly back, that's all PB3, and the back acreage beyond that is RAR 90. So that's kind of a quirky parcel
That
right
was,
now.
that was where the Mike's fruit stand was, right?
Is that right?
Yeah, right.
As you can see from the GIS, there is an existing house there. No immediate changes that I'm aware of are being proposed to that. Now, continuing again further towards campus, that parcel 0.32, the next one there, that's where the subject development would be. And what my client would like to do, and I think you probably saw or read this in the project summaries, is they're looking to develop a coffee house there. There's a lot of activity going on in the general vicinity and the Four Corners with the Standard. There's a lot of people in the area. We think a coffee house is a great opportunity to create a sense of place, to add an amenity and a convenience that many people seek and in fact need every single morning with their coffee. So that's what the proposal is on that 0.32 acre parcel primarily. And then again, coming closer to campus, 1640 is the fourth of the properties to be purchased and under contract. That has a house on it as well. Again, no immediate plans to do anything and change that house. They're older houses, they're modest houses. I believe they're probably rentals at the moment and will likely stay as such for a while. The reason we really wanted to come and talk to you about this proposed development is because the 0.32 acre parcel where it would go is presently RAR 90, and it's not a permitted use in that zone. It would require some regulation amendments, change of zones in order to make this happen. We do think it's a good use of that land because this whole stretch on the north side of Storrs Road there, up until 1620, which is still a couple more pieces up, if you don't mind putting the cursor on.
1620.
Yeah, right there. All of that is in the sewer district. So with sewer capability, opening those parcels to market-driven maximum development potential is really a good thing. I mean, that's the whole reason you wanted a sewer district, is to expand your development opportunities at those four corners. So all of those properties up through 1620 are presently in the sewer district. It would make sense to have some broader opportunity to do something other than a single family home on those parcels. Again, the only specific proposal that my client would like to pursue at this time is the coffee house on the 0.32 acre parcel. It would likely involve some minor lot line adjustments with the parcels on the north and south, those where the houses are, just to accommodate parking and a potential drive-through. Now I've hit the nail on the head. That's another big thing that we want to talk to you about is market demand is for a drive-through, and really to make this project financially feasible, we would like to have a drive-through window on the coffee house. We know through speaking with staff, through reviewing your plan of conservation and development, just knowing you folks in general and the work I've been doing here, you want a pedestrian-friendly communities, particularly in this node and other nodes of town. You're building a lot of homes there, or no, I should say dwelling units there. There's going to be a lot of people there. We want it to stay pedestrian-friendly. What we would suggest is that I don't see anything inconsistent with a drive-through in a walkable neighborhood, and they can coexist with good planning. So that's really the key here, is it can coexist with good planning. with sidewalks, with bike trails, with having the building close to the road and the parking and back to provide maximum separation distance between pedestrians and vehicular conflict potential. So rather than flat out prohibiting it, for the sake of trying to generate and create a walkable community, we think it can be done as long as it's carefully reviewed and looked at. It's a modern communities kind of demand, if you will, drive-throughs, not just for fast foods and for banks and pharmacies, which you look at the GIS, you'll see you have drive-throughs already existing there. You have a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through at the gas station, you have the CVS there. So there are already drive-throughs there. Now, those are existing, and I know you're trying to make improvements with the new residential dwellings and units that are going in there. But again, we think that those can coexist with the people who are going to be living in that specific area, again, with careful planning. Back to it being a market-driven commodity, we all know people who are either mobility challenged, who maybe due to illness or for other reasons can't be in large crowds, and drive-throughs, or whether it's age and whatever the reason, drive-throughs are a convenience that people demand of their services these days. And we do think it's necessary to make this a financially viable project. And so, in addition to a zone change, we would likely need a regulation amendment to allow a drive-through. We would never ask for, obviously, an as-of-right drive-through. It would always have to be something that would be done via special exception or special permit with careful attention to detail and oversight by the commission to make sure that the parcel can accommodate it and create no hazards and impediments to the pedestrian amenities that you want there as well. And something I want you to keep in mind is, this is a heavily traveled corridor, right? 195 is always going to be heavily traveled. There's going to be traffic coming and going, not just to stores, but through and beyond to the Willimantic area. So this is a heavily traveled corridor. We're not going to be getting rid of traffic in this area. People, whether there's a drive-through window at this coffee shop or not, are going to be driving to the site. They're going to be driving onto the site, they're going to be parking, they're going to have to drive off of the site. And the difference between doing a loop around back to a window to pick up their coffee instead of have to park, get out and go do it, really is not going to significantly, we don't believe, change the traffic trips that are going to be coming and going from this parcel. So because this isn't, an as-of-right development, certainly, and because it doesn't squarely fit within either the zone or the regulations as they currently are, before we go too much further with this, we just need to hear from you folks. What do you think about this use in particular at that general Four Corners area, a coffee house, cafe, and what do you think about the idea of modifying the regulations, again, with controls and oversight to potentially allow for a drive-through at that parcel? If you want to see kind of what we think it will look like, there is another slide that we had presented that's got both the traffic circulation, general layout. It's very conceptual still. And there's also a conceptual rendering.
The white building, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, that's the white building, but we also have a kind of a pseudo concept site plan that was submitted. Do you have that?
Yes, I do. Hold on, please.
Let's go to that one first, maybe. So that's just the aerial right there. Okay, that one right there. Maybe we could zoom in a little bit.
I'm gonna orient it. Nope, that was the wrong way. Two more.
There we go. So there you can see kind of in the darkish line, the irregular shape of the lot. Where you see on the lower side of that with the striping, that would be an area where we would likely do a lot line adjustment with the neighboring parcel so we could put some parking to the side of the building. Regulations require parking in the side and rear, not in the front of the building. When I say that, if we are successful in convincing you that PB3 is the appropriate zone here. I suppose I should talk about that a little bit. I mean, there are some options, obviously, as to what the right zone should be. In my mind, it seems, since this is already at the outskirts of PB3, which is the Four Corners area, it would seem a natural progression just to include and encompass those areas that are in the sewer district up to 1620 within PB3. Just again, to allow flexibility and options for development potential moving forward. But if PB3 isn't what you're looking at, there are other commercial districts, whether because it's on the outskirts of PB3 and encroaching closer towards residential, if you wanted to do one of the mixed use developments. Yes.
Before we talk about PB3 and things like that, why don't we just take a look at this picture and make some observations from the photo? First of all, the sidewalk's on the other side of the street that's being developed. And this drive-through is coming out, if it's coming out to where the road narrows back into 2 lanes or it spreads out into 2 lanes, and that'll be a whole nother conversation. But that looks like a nightmare right there, the drive-through coming in and out. And I also thought that we're leaning more towards a higher, you said this would be, this is the maximum for developed capacity. I think we're looking for much more when it talks about development, but that'll be something we talk about when we talk about the zoning. We're talking about really packing things into this Four Corners.
This,
Well,
I'm not
Well-
opposed. Go ahead.
Well, let's keep in mind also, so there's 4 properties that my client or his colleague, his associate are looking at purchasing. They are all, except for this middle one, developed. So that limits immediate development potential unless you don't do some type of, they joined together and did some type of consolidation and joined the properties and built something else more dense. I'm not sure that's where it's going right now. For the immediate future, what we know is a development potential is just the coffee shop. There are some restrictions with regard to the rear land behind it with wetlands back there. So that also, I think, is a limiting factor as to what can be done in the future. And this is, again, a very general concept. It hasn't been reviewed by an engineer. It hasn't been reviewed by a traffic engineer. It hasn't been developed by either. And as part of any development, particularly one with a drive-through, we would need the input of a traffic engineer to make sure that the site was appropriately developed and that the ingress, egress, stacking, what have you, could all be properly accommodated on site with bypass and emergency access lanes and things of that nature. So this is a concept. And so I appreciate your comments, and we will certainly take them under advisement if and when we get to the stage where we're able to develop a full site plan. But really, big picture wise is using this piece for something other than single family, which would then require the zone change out of RAR 90 into a PB3 mixed use development, transitional zone, something of that nature. And yeah.
Now, looking at the map, I would, my druthers would be to start at the corner and move the development, rather than having a house on either side. It would be nice to start at the corner and move, develop something perhaps in all 4 pieces together.
So eliminating the one or both of the existing houses and do some type of consolidated.
It seems odd to have a house.
Bottleneck
Mhm.
at the corner.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think we're, as Craig pointed out, I think we're hoping for a bigger project there than one coffee house in a vacant lot. That seems like the minimum that could be done there.
So I
Yes,
think Vera had a,
Vera, yeah.
I too am concerned about the drive-through, and you seem to indicate that you think that that's what will make it successful, is to have a drive-through. So that means you're expecting a lot of traffic through if you're going to make it successful. I point out that CVS and the Dunkin' Donuts have exits on other than Stores Road. Here, you're stuck with entrance and exit, and I'm sure you're not gonna have a light there so close to the four corners. I would think they wouldn't want to do that, but maybe they would. But I would say we absolutely need a traffic study that we can pull apart. And also, see, I know Department of Transportation doesn't commit to anything, do they, until we approve it? So we don't really know what they would advise us to do.
Yeah, does the lot have an existing curb cut at all?
Does.
It has a curb cut. Whereabouts, David?
See that little jog in the property line along
Yep.
195? Yes, right there.
Was there a house there before?
There is a house the other side of it.
There's no house presently on this piece. This
There
piece is vacant.
presently-
It's in between. two
Was
houses.
there a house
I
in the
don't know.
past?
No,
Seems odd that there'd be a vacant lot for forever.
It doesn't look that.
Oh, okay.
It's a very small.
It used to be owned by Charter Communications Entertainment One.
Oh, yeah.
No, this one too.
They got a little,
really?
Yeah, that went from them to Moskowitz. Mm-hmm. And it went from Yukon to Charter, Charter to
Charter has a
Moskowitz.
box there someplace.
So,
Mr. Anglin had a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, I think my comment echoes Craig. This lot seems very small for the drive-through and coffee house. It's hard for me to see this as really more of a coffee shack, given the drive-through you're talking about. You're talking, what is this, a third the size of the CVS lot? And you're gonna wrap, you got entrance and exit, you're gonna wrap the cars around and have parking and have the place that is the coffee house. It's hard for me to see this as really serving like dine-in clientele at all.
We do, to talk about another application that's come before the commission very recently, the most recent drive-through that we heard was the redevelopment of the McDonald's. And just to share what was in that previous application concerning the most recent drive-through we've heard, business model sits around 80 to 85% either pickup or drive-through orders for their business model. But for many fast food or fast nutrition, that is a
Before
similar
we even
thing.
get before we get even any further, I just wanted to take like a step back here, okay? So right now, first of all, right now, it is zoned RAR 90, right? It's within the sewer service area. I think many people would agree that because it's in the sewer service area, it could have a more intense use. Within the future land use map from the 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development area, it's the future land use is rural residential village. And this area is part of the Four Corners Historic Village. So I know there's maybe not a lot left of the historic hamlet that was once Four Corners, but I'm just going to read from the 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development. It says the purpose of this designation is to protect and enhance the pattern of development unique to historic villages as distinct from general rural areas. Let's see. It's these areas, and again, this is your future land use map. It has nothing to do with the zoning, but when you're looking at a zone change, it should be consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development. This is why this is sort of interesting, because we're in the process of updating the Plan of Conservation and Development, as you all know, all right? So the design characteristics for a rural residential village says these areas have been distinguished from general rural residential agriculture forestry areas to reinforce the characteristic cluster of houses generally seen in a village environment. Some villages have houses on fairly small lots, such as Eagleville. Others are on narrow, deep lots. While predominantly residential in nature, some villages such as Eagleville, Merrow, and Mansfield Hollow have isolated commercial uses. So this may not be, I don't know. I think we have to make some decisions here as to where we want to go as we define a future land use designation for this part. Do we want to keep this as our rural residential village If so, then if I got a zone change application, I don't think that a drive-through would be consistent with that designation. But ultimately, that would be up to you. I mean, is probably something I would reflect in my staff memo.
And we're in the process of doing the 2025.
Right, this is why
Yep.
this is a little bit important. So
Yep.
the use types are low for the rural residential village are low density residential, agriculture, forestry, religious facilities, schools, municipal uses, adaptive reuse of historic structures. So they talk about the rural residential village applies to former farm and mill villages that are predominantly residential in nature, including Atwoodville, Chaffeeville, Chestnut Hill, Conantville, Eagleville, portions of Four Corners, which is why this one is yellow. Let's see, Gurleyville, Hanks Hill, Mansfield Center, Mansfield City, Mansfield Hollow, Merrow, and Mount Hope, and portions of Fort Perkins Corner, Spring Hill, and Wormwood Hill. So I think first off, when you're doing a zone change, whatever gets done in the PB3 zone, or whatever zone this is, will be able to happen anywhere in that zone. So if you're going to allow drive-throughs in the PB3 in the Four Corners area, then they can be allowed anywhere in that area. So I think you have to, and this is, when you're doing a zone change, you kind of have to think broadly like this, not just on a parcel level. So those are just some things as you're thinking about this and discussing and providing feedback, whatever feedback you give, if it's a zone change, it's going to apply to that full zone. So
On that topic, I guess just a couple of things just occur to me. Obviously, if we changed the zone to allow for drive-throughs, we'd have specific drive-through standards and criteria. So although it could feasibly apply to anything in PB3, it would only be if they can design it in accordance with whatever regulation standards get adopted as part of the regulation amendment. Something else that just jumps out at me, there's really no historical significance of either of the two single-family residentials that are on either side of this piece. And I'm fairly familiar with that corner, at least in my opinion. It doesn't seem like there's much of a village remnant feel left there at all. So to put this in the rural village might have been well and good at the time it was originally designated, but with the type of development we've seen there, it doesn't seem to really fit a rural village character any longer. I certainly agree that because this is our step one, next step would be consideration of zone change. Obviously, any zone change does have to comply with your plan of conservation and development. Technically, this use doesn't comply with the rural village on the future designation, but I really think that since you're going through this process anyway, for this application or not, I think it really makes sense to look at this stretch here and these properties within the sewer district. Do you want to continue the rural village designation there? Because that then really significantly limits the type of development you might see there, which works against the whole, again, sewer availability, utilities, heavily traveled intersection, what have you. So regardless of what we do with going forward with this application, I really would encourage you to look at your plan of conservation and development, future land use map, and do something with those rural village parcels that are within the sewer district. Again, regardless of the zone change. We do think that as part of that whole looking at both the plan of conservation and development and what you want to see in this area, I do think a zone change of those parcels is probably in the town's best interest as well. Again, there's utilities. They're on Route 195. They're in a well-developed section of town and being further developed. I think opening the door beyond RAR 90 is really important for those parcels and for the town. Whether it happens right away or not, that's to remain to be seen, but it makes sense to build the framework to allow for it for the future. So, you know, my client would love to develop this with his proposed use. That's what he's geared in on. It's the open available land for development right now. Everything else is either presently developed or has constraints with wetlands. And he's not immediately proposing to knock everything down and do a consolidated development in that area. Now, maybe based on what he hears from you tonight, he'll change his mind, but this is what he wants to do is on the vacant parcel is a coffee house. So, you know, I think moving in the right direction, updating your future land use plan is a good idea for this stretch. Updating your zoning designation for these parcels is a good idea. That doesn't mean you also automatically agree that our proposal is a good idea, but we're hoping that with the appropriate engineering review and attention to detail with traffic issues, that we might be able to have, you know, a shot at convincing you that this can work. Because we do think that the parcel can accommodate it, even though it's a tight size. And we do think that the inclusion of a drive-through facility does not automatically run contrary to having a walkable neighborhood in town. So back to
Thank you for making that presentation, and it is certainly is a timely issue because we're thinking exactly about that area. So any other questions?
So to the point on zone change, I think that's probably right. Like, it's a third of an acre, which is 6 times smaller than what we would expect an RAR 90 lot
Right.
to be.
Right.
So clearly RAR 90 is not appropriate for this area. That doesn't generalize, I think, to this specific project, but that point's well taken.
I think it's also important to start, like Paul was saying, at the corner and work our way back. And if we start changing the zoning all the way down the street, we might miss the opportunity of the increased density we're looking for right at the corner, right at the 4 corners. It might turn into a strip mall, and we don't want that.
Yeah, right.
We just got rid of strip malls.
Right.
May I? Does the proposal include outdoor dining at all? Temporary outdoor seats, tables?
well, I mean, the rendering that we had shown of the actual restaurant, now again, it was just a rendering. If you go to the last one, right there, it does have, you know, some outdoor deck and seating area. We did contemplate that, you know, people go and get their coffee, and it's not a big building. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of seating inside. So people come, they'll get their coffee. If there's a couple tables and seats inside, they'll sit there or they'll sit outside. I mean, we're going to try and integrate it with sidewalk amenities and walkable areas. So, you know, bike racks and what have you to get people there. So we thought having an outdoor seating area would be a good idea.
I think
Correct?
when you talk about a sense of place, I think being able to serve people at the place, like, as a maybe not, and I don't want to say necessarily the primary mode of interaction, but as a well considered. And I just don't think that the size and what you've described, the intensity of the use, I don't think that box is checked. Also, I don't think your palm tree is going to do very well.
Yeah, we might want to change the vegetation. Now, this is not, now today it may not seem like a historical village, but directly across the street is a tavern from pre-revolutionary times. Still standing.
Is there a plaque?
No plaque on it.
How come?
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
I remember when we looked at 1646, and I have to go to the older members of our committee. Well, you were on the committee. We had looked at that for housing, and I remember where the blue line was. It was all wet. So if we were to, it was not really suitable for, you know, and at the time it was RA 90. We were we were debating it. We wanted housing, but the lot just didn't work. So I think if we changed the entire zone, but I'm listening to Jennifer's comments, and they make sense. It should be the whole because whatever we do up until where the sewer ends, you know, they might extend the sewer. We don't know what's going to happen, but by changing that zone, it could certainly work. I just remember that was talked about, and I don't remember, it was during the COVID time, so I remember we were all on Zoom, and it was wet. That was one of the issues that they had with that property in the back. So maybe to your plan that you would buy all of them and change the lot lines, it might actually work. It might get what we all are looking for as a walkable. They might put sidewalks. Who knows what they're going to do? That's not for
Well,
us
we
to
have
decide.
invested a significant amount of what we did. I mean, we have $1 million down payment for a 10-foot wide multi-use trail that is going to go all the way from CVS down to Tower Loop Road. And we're in the design phase of that. And we're waiting for $2 million at least to get that built. So, but that is going to be, my understanding, it's still in the design process. That will be on the west side of the street. So I think all to say, this is a location that is most likely in transition. And it is one of those, I don't know if you remember last year when the president of Connecticut APA, the Connecticut chapter of the American Planning Association came, and she talked about multi-generational housing and what some of the things we could do. And some of the things that we can do is we can look at our non-conformities. These are all non-conforming lots, right? And so it's something to kind of think about moving forward when you're planning for this area. And certainly, I mean, this commission, this town has been very, very deliberate about keeping our planned development areas in very tight locations. So we've got Four Corners, that red blob that we were just looking at, Four Corners, Store Center, King Hill Road, the Eastbrook Mall area, Perkins Corner. Those are our sort of planned development areas. And so whatever you would want to see heading down towards Yukon, I would think you'd want some sort of transition to kind of allow for to prevent sprawl. So you want, I mean, so in thinking about that, you know, moving forward as we finalize the future land use map for the POCD.
Well, I think this has been a helpful discussion, and I think you've gotten a pretty accurate view of what we're thinking.
You okay? Okay. All right. We thank you for your time then.
Thank you. Okay, next we have certificate of zoning compliance authorization with regard to special permit for McDonald's.
Yes. So if you've been to the southern end of town, you can see that McDonald's is moving along very quickly. It looks like from what I saw over the weekend, the curbing went in. They're trying very hard to get the binder layer of the pavement down before the plants shut down, because that would be a real holdup for them. Anticipated opening, if Eversource comes through with what they need to do, is going to be December 15th. Obviously, we can't put in landscaping, so no landscaping. So they're asking you to authorize me to accept a bond, and then work with them throughout the winter and the early spring on getting that bond amount together and the bond agreement together, so that they can go ahead and open on December 15th. We do have the owner, Rachel, is with us, and I see she's turned her mic off. So Rachel, anything you'd like to add?
So the landscaping would be done in the spring then?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. The one question, the reason we don't have the bond amount for you tonight is whether or not they can put the stone wall in is still kind of up in the air. So once they decide that, then we'll get the itemized list of the items, and we'll get that bond agreement going. whether or not they'll be able to get it in this winter or actually get the materials, I think.
So it'd be more likely that they do it in the spring.
I think they're hoping to do the stone wall now
Okay.
and not have to bond for it. But
Okay. Well,
it may
either
not
one
be
or the other,
possible.
either now or in the spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
The items basically for the bond will be all of the landscaping and the stone wall.
Okay, so what we need to do is authorize the bond of an undetermined amount.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Actually, your regulation just says you have to authorize
The bond.
me to agree
Okay.
to the bond, but not the actual amount. And Michael and I will work with Derek Delai on the amount to check.
Someone like to put that forward?
Paul Hub.
Okay, thank you.
Ron moves in accordance with Article 12, 190-87C, 4A, and Article 11, 190-76A, 3, to authorize the zoning agent to issue a certificate of zoning compliance relative to zoning permit Z 250131, relative to the redevelopment of the McDonald's restaurant site located at 118 Stores Road, provided the following conditions have been met. 1, a bond agreement is fully executed between the applicant owner and the town of Mansfield with regard to landscaping items. The bond amount and type, surety or cash, will be determined by the Director of Planning and Development. 2, the suitable bond is received in accordance with the executed bond agreement. 3, all public health and safety components of the project have been satisfactorily completed as determined by the zoning agent. 4, all approved criteria for certificates of zoning compliance outlined in Article 12, 198-87C have been met.
Moved by Ron.
Second by DeVivo.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, passes unanimously. It's too bad they have to wait for Eversource.
Yeah, it's a transformer issue.
Ooh.
So if
And those are
Eversource
short.
delivers the transformer and they get permanent power, then they think they'll be on schedule. If not,
Okay, what else do we have for today? Okay, there's minor modifications. I
Yes,
approved.
yeah. So basically, we're just going to be more intentional. With any site plan, there's always going to be a few modifications, and your regulations allow for minor changes of approved plans may, with the concurrence of the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the zoning agent, can be made, provided such changes do not affect the overall layout, design, or nature of existing or proposed buildings or site improvements. And then we need to report those to the overall commission. So there were such changes mainly to the landscaping, basically. And Jolene and Michael went out there and they inspected the trees and where they couldn't put mulch, they were putting rocks and things like that. And so those we felt were minor. And so Paul did sign off on those and we're just reporting them to you.
One of the places where it had to be stones instead of mulch was a place where people flipped their lit cigarettes.
yeah. So to prevent fires,
Mulch would not be a good
Yeah.
idea right at that
Yes.
particular spot.
So yeah, to prevent fires through the landscape area, they asked to swap out the mulch for rubber rock, basically stone. Other minor things like there was a tree proposed for very close to one of the EV charging stations. So the watering of the tree that close to electricity was not going to be a good idea. So minor things like that were reviewed by Paul and Jennifer and approved.
Okay, is there anything else we need to do today?
Paul, I have a question, I think for staff. To me, the door kind of got open tonight about the four corners.
Mhm.
what's the means, mode, time, place for that discussion to continue about consideration of things in the Four Corners area being considered rural village, for example?
So defining the, it's sort of updating the future land use map.
Okay.
So that would be the sort of broad brush, not the zoning regulations, but sort of what your policy, your vision is for that area. And then that would inform the zoning regulation changes. And as you know, the regulations could be changed, someone could initiate a zoning text amendment and then a map amendment. And that's what I think these folks are trying to understand from the commission, whether or not you feel like that is a good idea for this particular area. So that would be the way to do that.
But I think Ken meant that our discussion about that area.
Would be with the future land use map.
That
and the
is what
future.
I mean.
Yep, and
Yeah.
that would be, yes, so that,
We're in the process. Michael, have you done the map yet?
I am working with our consultant, so in addition to it being POCD season, it's also grant writing season. So I
Okay.
have even less time than I used to. So I asked our consultant to produce that map for you all so you could look at it. I think, provide the slides to folks.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have access to the broadly crayon colored map essentially that I did. But if you have thoughts, now is the time. Do we have a reg review committee meeting scheduled in December?
we do not. However, we can have a meeting. I don't think it would necessarily be a reg review committee meeting that we'd want to do. I think
Yeah.
we'd want to have an overall commission meeting. And this is, we have one last commission meeting, and you have public hearings for some regulations, but I do think we could carve out some time to kind of maybe finalize our thoughts on the future land use map.
Yeah, I
And
think,
if
yeah,
not-
let's set aside some time to look at that map, and that'd be 2 weeks from now, right?
Yes, if not, you do not have a meeting that first Monday in January, but also that would be another time. So I think that's January 5th is the first Monday in January. So we could do it then if there's no time. So, yeah, but I do want to get that done sooner rather than later. I think this is important. I also think when and if the council decides to join the CMDA, something like this may be helpful in getting their feedback and advice on.
Yeah, definitely.
Jen, is what our presenters brought to us tonight in compliance with the 2025 COPD or?
POCD. It's not in compliance with your 2015 Plan of Conservation and
And we
Development.
haven't completed the 2025 yet?
Correct. So if you want to if you want to make it compliant, if this is sort of why this is something to chew on right now, right? This would involve you, if you're going to do this, you really should kind of, if you want drive-throughs and you want that kind of development, or you want, whether or not you want drive-throughs or not, or whether or not you want to add a little bit, like maybe some mixed use in that sewer service area, now is the time to talk about that. And maybe that's sort of that rural commercial or village center district, so that it allows you to have your mixed use center, which is your most dense, and then you can sort of start scaling down. Sort of that's sort of one thing I've thought about.
Express a point of view about this. I think what you're describing, Jen, is something we ought to be doing before we specifically look at a particular site, is having that broader discussion about what we think about this whole area.
In terms of painting with a broader brush, any consideration of a change to the future land use map should be based on physical characteristics that define the area, right? And I think the critical thing that was pointed out today was we have an area of rural residential village that is in an area where a sewer line has been expanded. Does that change, in this body's view, the intended use patterns for that area.
I do just want to caution us though, because we are kind of going off agenda right now. So I think we should have, yeah, we should make sure that this isn't a topic on the agenda and we should be
Yes.
very intentional about discussing that so that the public understands that, you know, when you're making these decisions.
Yeah, Vera.
Talking about reg review, I meant to say when we were approving the minutes that in the new business, the committee appointments, I thought I was appointed, but it's, my name isn't there.
Okay, we can fix that.
So maybe if you listen to the tape, you'll find out whether I was or wasn't.
You are appointed.
I thought you were in.
Yeah. Okay, so we will take this up at our next meeting,
When's our next meeting?
December
2
15th.
weeks from today.
Okay.
We have hearings.
Zychek had his hand up.
Yes.
I think a lot has to do.
If you could speak in your microphone, Mr. Zychek, thank you.
Yes, as far as a lot has to do with what happens on that corner, as far as how do you want the traffic pattern to, do you want it to slow down?
I think,
Or do
you
you
know,
want it to speed up?
Mr. Chair, I think just point of order, I do want to make sure that I think this is a really important conversation to be had. But I do think we need to have this on a noticed agenda. And so I think, you know, when you can't sleep at night and you're thinking about Four Corners, take notes and bring them to this meeting and let's have a really robust conversation about what we want to see there, but make sure that it's on a publicly noticed agenda. So.
I was asking.
You were out of line.
Josh
But I was
Walter?
asking to put it on the agenda. That's what
Josh Walters has his hand up.
Yes, Josh.
Thanks. Just a quick question process for this. Is there a way if I have a certain perspective and I wanted to share it ahead of time with the other commissioners so that they have a chance to reflect and not have to react cold?
No.
Is there a mechanism to do that?
You can, there is, but it has to be submitted as part of the packet. So for example, you could have, if you could have a communication and we could send it out to the full commission and it would be noticed on the agenda. You just can't have a meeting without a noticed meeting. So if you do have thoughts and if folks do have thoughts about this, that you would like to, you know, write up a brief paragraph or and you would like to share it with your fellow commissioners, I encourage you to do so. I think that's really helpful. But we'll just publish it in the packet as a communication.
Can you just remind me of the timeline to get it into the packet?
Sure. So we publish the packets as long as you get it to us, say Thursday at noon before the meeting, then you're good. We publish the packets usually around 4-ish the Thursday before the meeting.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Anything else? All right, so we are adjourned at 7:40.
Night, everybody.
See you in a couple minutes.
Recording stopped.